Hello and welcome to Wine.com Experiences. I'm Gwendolyn Osborne. Today we are talking about Italian wines and specifically the island wines of Italy. I also want to mention that this tasting is brought to you through our partnership with the Italian Trade Agency, the ITA, with their Italian wine marketing initiatives through Wine.com. So Italian island wines, and I love this theme because island wines are distinctive. The climate, the soils of islands, they're different from everywhere else, kind of on the mainland, and they're really representative of a sense of place. So today we're focused on three wines on the exceptional terroir and vineyards of both Sardinia and Sicily. And so the three wines that we'll be tasting today are the Ankara Vermentino, Argiolas Costera Cannonau, and the Tenuta della Terra Nera Etno Rosso. So let's introduce our guests who will be here to help guide us through these wines from the islands. Joining me today, we have Renato Spanu, who is owner and partner at Ankara, Valentina Argiolas, who is owner at Argiolas, and Christian Listro, who's global sales director at Tenuta della Terra Nera. Welcome to all of you.
Ciao. Thank you, Gwendolyn.
Ciao. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited about trying these wines again, and also talking about Sicily and Sardinia. I've had the privilege of being able to visit Sardinia, but Sicily is still on that bucket list for me. So why don't we just go ahead and get started and dive into the first wine, which is the Ankara Vermentino from Sardinia. So Renato, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Good. So Ankara, I want to talk a little bit about that because it can kind of be considered on the newer side as it pertains to Italian wine history, if you will. So can you tell us a little bit about what drew you to Sardinia to make wine? I guess it was nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm from here, from a small town in the highlands of Gallura called Sant'Antonio di Gallura. Well, I guess you could say I'm kind of a half and half. My mother is from America and my father is from here. And I kind of grew up in both worlds my whole life, but the heart is where the heart is, and the heart was always here. So I started the winery with my wife in 2006, and here we are today. We started with about 4 hectares of Vermentino, and now we're at a total of about 10 hectares as a winery. So one step at a time, we're moving forward.
So we have two wines from Sardinia today, but you are in the northern part of Sardinia, which is kind of known for being an ideal place for Vermentino. Can you talk a little bit more about that spot and kind of what makes it so ideal for that grape?
Absolutely. So Vermentino is a fairly widely planted variety in Italy. You can find it in other regions as well outside of Sardinia. But this particular area where we are in the northeastern part of the island of Sardinia, which is called Gallura, Gallura, is the only DOCG area for the production of this grape in all of Italy. It's considered to be the best area for its climatic conditions that are found here. So what makes Gallura unique is partly its soils, which Gallura is basically one big granite rock. Therefore, the minerality from the granite comes through in our wines quite impressively. And also, it's probably the coolest part of the island, as here in the Northeast, we have constant northern winds, whether coming from the northwest or the north. So it's somewhat an ideal climate and territory for the Vermentino grape to thrive in. Not to mention altitude. The highlands here in Gallura, the vineyards start around 200 meters above sea level and go to over 500 meters above sea level. So this also contributes to fluctuations of temperatures between night and day, which elongates our hang time on the vine. We're typically the last area in Sardinia to harvest our grapes. And the Vermentinos that come from Gallura, besides their minerality, also tend to be the most aromatic, especially the ones from the higher points of the highlands.
Okay. Yeah, I love that's one of my favorite parts of Vermentino is the aromatics, and I have had a chance to have this wine, and it's just there's so much going on in the glass. So, speaking of
Thank
that,
you.
why don't we taste the wine, and kind of as we do, if you could kind of talk us through those aromas and that the structure and the flavor profile and kind of how it represents that unique spot where it's coming from.
So, in particular, our Vermentino comes from an area called the Vein of San Leonardo, which is kind of considered one of the top crus of Gallura because of its unique microclimate that's formed there. It's between the Lake Liscia and the northern slopes of the mountain Limbara. And here we have an even stronger microclimate with even more fluctuations of temperatures. So our aromas tend to be even more intense than the average per se in this area. In particular, when you're smelling the Vermentinos from the highlands up here, you're going to get the typical the typical sense of almond blossoms. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of smelling an almond tree when it goes into blossom, but the white flowers are quite pleasant, and it's a typical aspect that you'll find in these wines, along with an underlying note of citrus as well. In Sardinia, we have this unique mandarin that has a very delicate citrusy smell to its peel, and you can definitely get a hint of that in our wines as well.
Yeah, I love the floral. I love just the fruit, but also the citrus is just there's just layers going on in there.
And on the palate, obviously, that granite starts coming through, right? So that vein of minerality that comes straight through the middle of the palate, which somewhat carries the wine and brings length to it as well. And then, as all Vermentino or most Vermentino should have, it has somewhat of an almond finish to it. That kind of bittersweetness at the end of the wine, and that's a typical trait to the Vermentino grape.
Yeah, and what I love about Vermentino and well, really well made Vermentino too is that wonderful balance of there's a weight to it and a texture, but with that really that minerality, that citrus that kind of just uplifts it, and makes it refreshing and kind of well, gives it a little zing.
I
And it
agree.
does have, yeah, and it does have that beautiful finish. So, um, Vermentino, how, is it a drink within the first 2 years? Do you ever have any aging potential with Vermentino or what you're doing?
Absolutely. So our Vermentino, we've kept obviously a historic library of it, and it tends to age quite well. It'll go anywhere between 10 to 15 years with no problem whatsoever. The uniqueness is that after the first 2 or 3 years, it starts to slowly resemble a bit Riesling in the glass. These aromas of petrol, of this really strong minerality start coming out, which could be similar to having, for instance, a Riesling, a dry Riesling, obviously. And the older the wine gets, the more these aromas and this minerality start coming through. If you like that type of aspect in wine, you'll love this Vermentino after 3 or 4 years.
Yes, I have to work on my patience of waiting, but yes. And obviously Italy and wine and food are just kind of so intertwined. When you have when you're having Vermentino, what do you put on your dinner table?
Oh, well, so as here in Sardinia, anything out of the sea obviously will go quite well with the wine. But we have a specialty here on the island, which is called botarga, which is the dried egg roe of the mullet, which we grate over spaghetti or pasta, or even slice and eat with raw vegetables like celery or fennel or so forth. And it has just a really amazing flavor to it, which matches quite well with the Vermentino. If you do a nice spaghetto with botarga and a bowl of Vermentino, it's kind of a match made in heaven.
So, note to everybody watching that you're just going to have to go to Sardinia to really enjoy the Vermentino.
If you can't find the botarga, just grab some clams and do a nice little spaghetti with clams. That'll work too.
Absolutely. But just talking about this makes me want to get on a plane and come visit. But well, thank you so much for sharing the wine and telling your story. It's absolutely delicious. And I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
So next up, we have the Argiolas. And Valentina, welcome to you and thank you for being here. Ciao. So we're still in Sardinia, but we're moving a little bit further south and of course with a different grape variety. But I kind of want to start with a little bit of background on Argiolis because you have a history here in Italy. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the winery started with my grandfather Antonio in 1938 with only 3 hectares of vines. The beginning, as in the south part of Italy and specifically in the island, the wine were selling bulk. But at the end of 70s, especially after a very, very fundamental for my grandfather trip in California, Argentina, it was 1979. He decided to revolutionize everything in the winery, idea of production, and also in the vineyard. And the collaboration in the same period with Giacomo Takis gave us the brave to revolutionize the vision of Argiolas production, moving from quantity to quality and start to producing our brand with only traditional or native grapes. That was fundamental for us. Then it was important, especially during the end of 80s, that when Touriga was born, was 88. It was the first wine that represent our idea of production. And fundamental was also the important approach of my father, Franco, and my uncle, Giuseppe. And then I'm the third generation with my sister, Francesca, and my cousin, Antonio, that is a person in charge of US. You can find in the market very often during the year. And now we are continuing to the path of my grandfather, producing native or traditional wine in a modern way, especially protecting the biodiversity, protecting and investing a lot in sustainability, and try in bracket to prevent the global changes that are influencing in a bad way the production of wine.
And I mean, I know the label so well, and because you have good variety of wines, but also see them in restaurants and of course on Wine.com. So today we are going to be tasting the Cannonau, which is known as Grenache or Garnacha in other places in the world, but uniquely in Sardinia goes by Cannonau. And Sardinia is recognized as a blue zone, where many residents tend to live past 100. And the author of that book mentions Cannonau kind of as part of this Sardinian lifestyle. So can you kind of touch on that?
Yes, I was talking about before that was a very, very, I would say funny, because also for us it was a surprise research from National Geographic that studied, selected 5 zones in the world when people live longer. One is Sardinia, and the other one is Okinawa, when I was in June to discover the secret of Okinawa long life. And the other one is in California, a village in California, another in Venezuela, South America, I don't remember.
Costa Rica, I think.
Yeah, and then Icaria in Greece. Yeah. And the journalist analyzed the reason why people live so long, you know? And in Sardinia, one of the reasons was because we drink a glass of Cannonau every day for the richness in terms of antioxidant properties, the anthocyanin, the colors, etc., etc. And we are the example in the family because my grandfather lived till 103, still drinking a glass of especially red wine every day, one for lunch and one for dinner.
So 2 glasses.
Yes.
Yes.
Moderated consumption, but everyday consumption. Kind of medicine, no?
Absolutely.
Vitamin.
Yeah. And so what about this spot where you are, this region in Sardinia in the south, where the grape thrives? Tell me a little bit about the vineyards, the soil, the terroir there.
Okay, so Cannonau for sure is the king, we say, of Sardinian or red varieties because it's present in Sardinia since the Spanish domination. All people, the recent studies say that is an antecedent of the Spanish, but for sure as a wine that is present in the island for centuries and that can be have time to adapt in a perfect way. Also, if you switch from the north, Sardinia on the mountain in the center to the south, that the wine have also different characteristics as the Vermentino from the north to the south. We don't say better or not, it's different because Sardinia is considered a continent with different soil, different climatic condition, different biotypes, different exposition, etc., etc. And also Sardinia is very important for the total production of the Vermentino in Italy. We have the 4% of total production, especially in the south part. And we grow Cannonau in 3 different areas. The most important for us in the area at 300 meters above sea level, especially for the limestone and clay soil and calcareous soil that allow us to have a very aromatic kind of Cannonau and also help to maintain the elegant freshness and also the longevity. We use, for example, for Costera, the Cannonau that grow in the vines at about 22 years old. Okay. But also we have Cannonau in the south, we have Cannonau in the Sulcis area, different area that we use for a different kind of wines.
Okay, well, let's taste this, the Costera Cannonau, and maybe just kind of as we drink it, as we did before, just walking through this flavor profile and the structure and kind of how it highlights the grape in the land.
We produced the first vintage of Costera in '89 because our idea, the first Cannonau we produced was from Turriga, our iconic wine. In '88, but the idea of production was different. For Turriga, we would like to have a wine capable of age well, a powerful wine, very rich, capable to be compared with the red Italian famous red wines as Brunello, Barolo. For Costera, we would like to achieve a most approachable wine. That's why we choose the different plants, different also period in oak. But the similarities that we use for fermentation in long period in cement tanks to maintain the balance of the wine, a period in stainless steel first, cement, and a different period in oak. For example, for Costera, we move from 4 to 6 months in second passage oak.
Yeah,
the characteristic of the Cannonau from the south is that there's a very, very warm and soft and balanced wine with intense note of cherry and red fruit and jam.
Yeah, it's just very fresh and like you said, kind of warm, like warm, fresh.
Yes, it's a wine that you can also serve a little bit chill, put on the fridge in the summer and serve to 16 degrees. It's a perfect combination, especially during this hot summer.
Yes.
Very easy to drink. Wine we consider a daily wine one of my favorite, of course, of my grandfather. Yeah, for daily consumption.
It is. It's very approachable. It's beautiful. I mean, I love Grenache, Garnacha, Cannonau. This whole family of grapes is one of my favorite red varieties. But it is that kind of approachable. But like you said, slightly chilled. What about with food?
With food, okay.
Does it go with everything? I feel like it goes with everything. If you're having a glass every night, it has to go with everything.
Yeah. With food, we can move, for example, from fish food, for example, tuna, roasted tuna from Caloforte, southeast part of Sardinia, very good. Or we can use a very traditional Sardinian dish, a suckling pig, roast suckling pig. Okay. That could be delicious, especially with a crispy skin. That match pair very well with the Cannonau, or mature and medium mature cheese, sure.
That's definitely
that you can find easier in US.
And do you want? I mean, is this a wine that you would want to drink within the first few years? Do you, because it seems so approachable and bright and fresh.
Yes, we suggest to you to drink young because it's a young version of our Cannonau, but can age very well for 10 years without any kind of problem. They change.
And how many Cannonau's does Argiolas make?
We do 4, 1 rosé, the Costera, the Senes, Cannonau Riserva, and the Turriga is a blend of 85% is Cannonau.
Okay.
It's very important for us. And yeah,
Right.
when we've started the production of Argiolas, the idea was to be focused only in traditional native grape. In a period when all the market talk about international varieties, it was very, very, very difficult to find the wine, the red grape that could represent this idea at the Canonau, where this is the grape that can do.
Well, this is delicious. Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. Cheers. And as we say in Sardinia, Acentanos.
Acantanos?
Acentanos means I wish you live till 100.
Oh, I love that. Acantanos with my Canada now. So thank you so much, Valentina.
You're welcome.
So now we are switching islands. We are moving from Sardinia over to Sicily. Christian, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Let's see. So first, I kind of want to get a little bit of story or history about Tenuta della Ternera. I hope I'm pronouncing right.
Sure.
And how the winery kind of came to be, a little of your history.
So Tenuta della Ternera started from scratch 20 years ago, basically, 22. So this is the 20th anniversary of our bottling, and we're celebrating with a 20th anniversary wine. It comes from really a great grand vision from Marco de Grazia, which is a kind of a wine genius. He's been the one that has brought a lot of fortune in Barolo and Barbaresco, exporting the new style of Barolos and Barbaresco in the US. And so wine-wise, there was a lot of background, a lot of culture, a lot of experience. He kind of fell in love with Etna. He had a selection, a portfolio of Italian wines that he was selling abroad, and he missed Sicilian wine. At the time, it was both him and his brother. So his brother went to Pachino, where the Nero d'Avola, and at the time, we're talking about late 90s, Nero d'Avola was, the much more renowned grape. And he went to Etna because he's been always believing that the finest products come from volcanic soils, be it wine, tea, tobacco, rice, whatever. There is something specific about volcanic soils, and Etna is one of a kind in a way, because it's an active volcano. So we used to say that our soil comes from the sky, because we have ongoing lava eruptions and ashes falling down, up to 1 meter of ashes per year.
On the vineyards?
Yes.
In the vineyards, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So it's and ashes are very nutrient material, but more than ever, it's alive. So it's something that constantly changes. So it has a magic. So Etna used to be a very, very big market for barley wine. Up to the Second World War, the Etna was the largest wine region in the Mediterranean. The little port harbor of Riposto, which is a tiny town of 2,000 people, was second only to Marseille in the trade of wine, of bulk wine. So Etna has a very, very ancient viticulture history, dates back to the Greeks, which they've always been with a booze around, and so they brought the native grapes from their islands, from Corinth specifically, to the island, and started planting on Etna. So we have a very, very much indigenous varietals. And Marco fell in love with this. All throughout the Etna, you could only find basically 2 or 3 varietals. And Marco, in a time, as Valentina said, in the 90s, when everyone was only talking about international varietals, this, really struck Marco and start tasting, the wines from the wineries, which at the time were only 5 or 6. Just by comparison, today they are 393, and this is in just 20 years.
Yeah, Mount Etna is that beautiful, magical place.
So it's Marco didn't like that much, the wines that were produced at the time. They were a little bit too Sicilian in a way. So very big, tough wines, wine for man, we used to say.
Monster wine.
Yeah, but it was, I remember when I was a kid burning my nose, really from the alcohol that you could smell in the glass. So really very 16, 17 degrees kind of wine, really undrinkable. But, you used to be drunk by everyone. And then he started tasting the farmer's wine. And he had this vision that, Etna has so many differences that, it could be the Burgundy of Mediterranean. And that's how it started. The first... you don't have it in your bottle because the original back label was changed to reflect the importers disclaimers. But in its first back label back in 2002, he said that Etna, for the different soils and extreme microclimates, could be considered Burgundy of Mediterranean, and it was not. It was not that far, because the variation that you have in such soil are incredible. Imagine that we have 54 hectares, so we started from scratch, so from zero. 54 hectares. We run 120 different micro vinifications to make 14 wines. So it's imagine the Etna soil as a lasagna, and that's the stratification of the lava flows.
Yeah.
And on top of these, there are 120 different microclimates just on the appellation, which is just 1,000 hectares. So there is plenty to work on. And Marco really fell in love. So he was living in Florence at the time. So, he did make or die or break kind of decision, and he moved on Etna and he started a winery in 2000.
And like much of Italy, and what we've been talking about is the indigenous grape varieties of Italy are so unique and important and distinctive for each region. So here in Etna, we have the Nerello Mascalese. Correctly? Yes, that's red. So tell us a little bit about the grape and why it does so well there.
So basically, the wines on Etna are very easy, in a sense that it has to be 80% Nerello Mascalese and 20% could be either Nerello Cappuccio or Nerello Mantellato, which are two different type of grapes. The Nerello Mascalese is very unique because it grows, basically finds its best expression on Etna, so it benefits of altitude. Just to give you some numbers, of course, the southern you go, the higher up the elevation rises in terms of altitude. So we are between 600, 500 and 1,000 meters of altitude on the northern side. And in the southern side, it goes up to 700 meters. So it's pretty high and it's pretty wide. So there is plenty of expressions. But the southern side tends to be a little more difficult because it's, south and it's also in city. So the eastern side gets a lot of clouds and rain, so it's good for the whites. And the north side, it's definitely let's say, the Côte d'Or for the Nerello Mascalese. It's not genetically related to either Noir or to Nebbiolo, but when you drink it, it kind of has that sibling-like feeling of them. It's actually genetically related to Sangiovese, so it shares the same difficulties, especially from vintages. But it's a grape that benefits from freshness, acidity. So it's aggressive in wines with a lot of freshness, a lot of acidity, very strong structure, but very fresh. I think that one of the things that really made the fortune of Etna wines is the approachability, both it young and very old.
Yeah. Well, that makes me want to taste the wine. Oh, there you are. Can we taste the wine now?
Something happened.
I'm ready to taste the wine. So yeah, so maybe if we can taste it, kind of talk us through what you were just talking about, just those aromas and kind of the, feel free to compare it to Burgundy, to Barolo, to Barbaresco, but also just what makes it.
I mean, it's just for those who are not, into Etna, to give you an idea, reference points.
Yes, I'm all for, if you like this, you might like this. So kind of saying,
that's kind of thing. Etna it's very small. The all of the Etna production, it's 1% of the Sicilian wine produced. So it's really nothing. So it's very difficult to find it, even though it's quite widespread in terms of number of producers, but the actual overall production is less than 6 million bottles for everyone. So it's to get an idea of how an Etna could taste. It's to give you a reference point. If you like Piedmont, if you like Barbaresco, a little less Barbaresco, or if you like Pinot Noir from Burgundy, then that's what you might like. Of course, prices are very, very different, of course. But I think that one of the characteristics that the Nerello Mascalese enjoys, it's on a way thematic feeling. At the end, it's very rich, especially the 22, which is a very classic vintage. It's very rich and dense and joyful, but it has this very gentle harmonic length and very gentle tannic structure that really can benefit the wine even for long aging in the bottle. So it's a wine that is very versatile. We drink it eating either fish, raw tuna, for example, especially when there is the passage of the tunas in the Sicily Channel, or with pasta alla norma with the aubergines and salty ricotta grated on top and tomatoes. So it's very versatile. Just as Valentina was pointing out, with her wine, could be served fresh as well, especially now. I mean, anything under 20 degrees is really fresh right now. So it's a wine that is being created to enjoy, even though we have a very fine Grand Cru. That's how we classify our wines. I think that this wine, the Etna Rosso, it's by far our most important wine. It takes half of the production, but overall, it's the result of 50 different microvinifications. So it really takes, something to get to a point where the wine behaves always, very harmonically. So the tannic structure is integrated with the flavors, with the bouquet, with the acidity. And I think that this is something that, has been a kind of learning on the job kind of process, even though Marco had a lot of experience before. But, the Etna soils are very, very different. We apply a different viticulture to all the 30 different parcels we have, because the soil is different, the age is different of the vines. So it's it's complicated, but
Yeah.
you know, the end result is great.
Beautiful. Yes. I mean, yeah, with all those different micro vinifications and different plots, it just, you're blending these flavors. But yes, I completely agree that the end product is absolutely beautiful. I love all the fruit and the earth and the floral that come through, and those aromas, and just the balance that you have on that palette. It's really pretty. I'm a huge fan of Etna Bianco. I'm a huge fan of Etna Rosso. Love the Etnas. But yeah, so thank you for this.
Welcome.
Yeah, and thank you all so much for being here, for sharing your stories, sharing your wines, crafting these beautiful wines. I hope those who are viewing are excited to kind of explore the island wines of Sardinia and Sicily, and even better, if possible, going there. As I mentioned, I've had the opportunity to go to Sardinia, and the wine was beautiful, but it was the experience of the wine and the food and just the atmosphere that I would love to go there and live to 100.
We are waiting for you.
Yes. And also, of course, I'm very excited to visit Sicily from all the stories that I have heard. So yes, and we are grateful also to the Italian trade agency, the ITA, for helping us be able to create and share these wines with everyone here in the US. So yes, so Christian and Renato and Valentina, thank you so much for being here. Pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
And ciao.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Ciao. See you soon.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Ciao.